Well, let's show you these latest pictures out of Malta. You can see there that afriqiyah airline sat on the tarmac. The doors open, the stairs are in situ. We can see a little bit of movement, I think, behind that foliage there blowing about it in the wind. But we believe, according to local media, that the women and children on board will be getting off that plane shortly. We were reporting previously that negotiators were in situ speaking to the two, we believe, hijackers on board that flight. And it does now seem as if hostages will be released. I think there's somebody standing at the doorway. But some passengers apparently have already left the aircraft, walking down the steps of that hijacked plane. But the shot that we can see, I can see someone in the doorway pointing outwards, and I think there is movement. I think people are actually coming off the aircraft. Joe Tidy is back with us in the studio. Joe, what do you know?
Yeah, the Prime Minister of Malta has just tweeted saying first group of passengers consisting of women and children being released now, and that would confirm what we can see there. This has been one of the, apparently one of the demands of the hijacker or hijackers, that they would release the passengers but keep the crew. We're not sure why, but we know there are 111 passengers on board and 7 members of the crew. There are unconfirmed reports as well that one of the passengers, or at least one of the passengers, is a member of the Libyan government, which would of course correlate with what we've heard, that this person could be pro-Gaddafi. Obviously, since Colonel Gaddafi was ousted from government in 2011, there's been fighting in the country between various groups trying to take control, and this would all tally up with what we've heard so far. But it looks like certainly there are a number of passengers coming off the plane imminently, according to the Prime Minister. We're not sure how many. Presumably it'll be done in groups.
Yeah, I think there's someone, we just saw someone just walking
right
out of that shot there, being guided down the stairs. So someone did just walk off the plane there. But for the moment, we think it's just the women and this one infant. So that's 28 women that would be, and 1 infant. So presumably all the men, all 82 men, will still be on board that flight.
Yeah, but the demands that we've heard are that if the demands are met, he or she or they, we're not sure whether it is 1 hijacker or 2 hijackers, they will release the remainder of the passengers as well. So we may be seeing in the next few minutes another group leave. I imagine that the negotiations that are going on with the hijacker or hijackers will be trying to establish some sort of system. They wouldn't simply let everyone fall
that seems like the young child leaving there on the right. That's definitely not an adult there, so that's the 1 infant. I thought it perhaps would be a smaller child, but that's probably a child in 10, 11, 12 coming off the plane just there.
Yeah, and I imagine the negotiations that are going on, I understand, with the Libyan transport minister and the hijacker or hijackers, they will be coming up with some sort of agreement. They will say, if you release X amount of people, we will do this. If you release the next batch of people, we will do this. And every one of these people getting off the plane will, of course, have to be processed in the correct way to find out who they are, check their health. Some of these people may, of course, be in shock. They will need some sort of medical assistance, but they will be looked after. And then I imagine they will say to the hijacker or hijackers, let's have the next group of people and you can get your next set of demands. We don't know what those demands are. All we've heard that is this person or persons could be pro-Gaddafi, which will tally, as I say, with other things that we've heard so far.
Let's bring in again Chris Phillips, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. And Chris, well, this is what people wanted to see, hostages being released from the plane, but it's an exceptionally tense time, one presumes.
It is, but it is good news, and the fact that this has happened very quickly, because often they try and keep people on the plane for as long as possible in order to build up the tension, build up their staging power, if you like, their negotiation power. So this is good news, and it does tell us that perhaps this will end out nicely, and I hope, obviously we all hope it does.
Just looking at those that we can see milling around the aircraft now, obviously passengers there, but also individuals in high vis. What we're not seeing are those armed individuals wearing flak jackets that we saw a distance away from the plane.
Yeah, and that will be part of the deal, actually, that those military types will be kept away. The fact is, no one seems to be rushing to get away either, which is a good sign. The fact it doesn't appear that stressful, and that people are wandering down the steps rather than running down the steps and things, it does augur well for the future.
Just to comment on what we just saw there at the top of the stairs, it appeared that there was a man who didn't appear to be dressed in uniform directing what we looking at it. It appears to be women and children away from the aircraft. It may well be the case. You wouldn't have expected to see one of the hostage takers emerging from the aircraft, but perhaps someone on board that flight, or indeed, would you see someone go on board to try and facilitate?
Well, you may do. I think they would be more keen on just getting someone within the plane to usher people out.
There again, we see that
yeah.
gentleman.
Yeah, it does look very, very calm. I mean, that's the best thing about all this, is that it does look like no one's under any stress. No one's actually running to get down the steps to get away. So it augurs well for a peaceful resolution to this.
This is how you want things to go, of course, but just reading back into the history of problems with Maltese hijackings, in 1985, a very different situation when the plane was stormed by troops and 60 people, including the 2 hijackers, were killed. So this is possibly something that they've learned in the intervening years, how best to manage a situation such as this, and very smooth indeed we're seeing.
And very quick as well. This is the key point. It's not something that often this takes hours to come to this point. So it does augur well, as I said, for a peaceful resolution.
Joe, we've just got a little bit more detail about the flight path that this afriqiyah Airways plane took. That it was Libyan air traffic control were informed that the plane was hijacked. It was diverted towards Malta, but then actually came back into Libyan airspace before turning around again. I mean, clearly for those on board, it must have been an incredibly stressful time, not knowing where they were to end up. I mean, we're just having a look at the radar at the moment, but it appears that it came very, very close to landing in Tripoli.
According to what I've read, there was a call that was put out by the pilot saying, we are in control of hijackers, we need to land as soon as we can in Tripoli. That was denied by the hijacker or hijackers, and that's why we saw that diversion to Malta. This isn't the first time that flights from Libya have been diverted to Malta, even though it seems quite far away, doesn't it? Quite a distance to travel into the Mediterranean Sea, of course. Almost the same distance again from where it arrived, where it set off from. So that seems to point to a situation where the hijacker has possibly had an argument with the pilot, or there was some sort of a negotiation in which the hijacker would have won and said, right, we're landing in Malta.
And I think there's an awful lot of people that actually want to go from Libya to Malta as well. So, you know, we mustn't rule out that as a possibility, that someone just wants to get away from the country.
OK, it's at 1 o'clock. You're looking at the shots of that afriqiyah airline plane on the tarmac in Malta. Women and at least one child have been allowed to disembark from that hijacked aircraft. We haven't actually seen any men disembark as yet. Joe, you've just nodded to me. Has that changed that situation? Well,
we've just seen a tweet from the Prime Minister of Malta, Joseph Muscat, who said he's just confirmed 25 people have now left that plane. So that we're looking at the women and the children. There will be well over 80 men left on that plane if we don't see them leave in the next few minutes. Then, of course, you've got the 7 crew as well, because the hijacker has said, or hijackers has said, I will let the passengers leave if my demands are met. We don't know what those demands are, but that would leave 7 crew remaining on that flight. And of course there are reports, unconfirmed, that there may be 1 or more members of the Libyan government on that plane, which would tally up with what we're hearing from the sources that the hijacker or hijackers claim to be pro-Gaddafi.
Yeah, I've not seen any movement in the last couple of moments. By my calculations, 82 men will remain on board that aircraft. We haven't seen any male passengers disembark as yet. The women and the 1 child, we have seen them leave that aircraft. But the negotiations must have been fairly successful thus far for those people to leave the aircraft.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the negotiations are being led by the Libyan Transport Ministry, who presumably they're not on the ground, but there are major numbers of Maltese security services surrounding that plane. It all looks very calm from the shots that we've seen of the passengers coming off, but what is important to mention is a safe perimeter around this plane. There will be potentially dozens of armed Maltese operatives who are ready to take action if is needed. But at this stage, it appears that the plane has been brought down safely in Malta, as per, we imagine, the hijackers' demands, and negotiations are being carried out. That the actual airport itself, the Malta airport, is being run as normal. It was only actually closed for around an hour and a half or so. All this is being done far away from the terminal, far away from any other planes, on a secondary runway, safe distance away from any other passengers. So it looks like the situation is not only contained, it seems to be going fairly well in terms of negotiations, as we've seen 25 people leave that plane in the last few minutes.
Well, let's bring in once again Chris Phillips, a counter-terrorism expert. Those first 25 that have left the plane, what will happen to them now?
Well, there'll be an immediate debriefing. The security services working there will be looking to find out who the hijackers are, what they're wearing, if they've actually seen any hand grenades, any explosives, and their demeanour. Are they really stressed? Are they, how are they acting towards the crew and the rest of the hostages? So there's an enormous amount of information that can come out of those ladies that have been released, and the more information, the more background they can get on these on the hijackers, the more chances they've got of actually persuading them, finding a way to persuade them to just let's have a peaceful resolution here.
But despite the fact that it's almost impossible to think of a method by which one could get a hand grenade on board an aircraft these days, even if the cabin crew hadn't seen it, even if none of the passengers had seen it, they would still operate under the assumption that these hijackers were telling the truth, that they did indeed have weaponry that they could use. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the key thing is that the pilot would have wanted to get that plane down as low as possible so that if they could depressurise the cabin, so that if an explosion took place, then they could deal with it and they could carry on flying, and then of course get it onto the ground, which they managed to do, and then get the negotiations started.
It's important as well to realise that this sort of flight coming out of Libya from the airport, I think it was Suda, it's not not that comparable with the sort of flights that we used to. Perhaps from the UK. I'm told that this airport, this runway that the plane took off from, very remote from the actual terminal, and not that difficult for people to get access to the plane before it takes off in order to smuggle things on board.
Of course, we're continuing to monitor these pictures, and they will, of course, be running on a delay. We have seen a degree of movement. We had a shot of the plane where we were viewing it very much more side-on, and certainly there was an individual in a white shirt moving around very close to the window that you might take to be the pilot. It could, of course, be anyone on board wearing a white shirt. But we've also seen at the very top of those the top of the ladder that you're seeing right now, what appeared to be a man dressed in civilian clothing, shepherding, ushering people out of the aircraft. These pictures from just a little earlier on give you a better view, perhaps, of the door to the plane, where you can just see a little bit of movement, and someone emerges into the sunshine. There appears to be a wave, a gesture, over to the side. There is an individual who's moved up and into the plane itself. Chris Phillips, once again, this will, of course, be what the negotiators wanted to get. They wanted to see as many civilians brought off the plane as quickly as possible. What then is the next step? Is there a quid pro quo from the